Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel for another video. So this is my first kind of big build since the update, and I'm going to be doing a kind of cottagecore little village, obviously with some of the new buildings. So I obviously went in, and this I originally did have completely decorated. As you can see, the whole other half of the forest is done, and this originally did have kind of like half of it was a village and half of it was a campsite, but because of the two new buildings we got, I was like, I'm gonna have to abandon the campsite idea and move it somewhere else, because this is gonna need to be a much bigger build to fit these in. So obviously, as you can see, I've placed down the new Belle's library that came with the Starlight bundle, and opposite that I do also have the Tavern from the premium shop, and then I obviously use the purple cottage and the other kind of cozy cottage that we got previously. So first I went in and placed obviously the buildings just so I knew where they were going and kind of got them in the right spot before recording the video, and I then went in with some of the main parts, like getting the pathway blocked in as well as some sort of fences and things. In this build I do kind of just chop and change areas. I don't really focus on one area at a time, just because I wanted to kind of just come back to things when I kind of got a good idea for them, and I had to rearrange things a lot of time. But yeah, I'm happy with how it turns out, and we will get started. Now in the build there are a lot of different sort of exits and entrances and sort of walkways that I needed to block in. I didn't want to use the mud pathway that I used throughout the whole build in entrances and exits, just because it would basically end up that the whole floor was the path and it just wouldn't look right. So I decided to do like sort of the main pathway to the actual core buildings using this path, and then as you can see I placed some smaller rocks just to lead to some of the other entrances as well as Elsa's cave. So when I was going in and placing trees, I didn't really know what trees I wanted to go for. Obviously, I knew I wanted to use some of the Ancient Landing trees to kind of match the rest of the forest vibe I'd gone for on the opposite side. But because of the jungle tree that was attached to the tavern house that we just got from the premium shop, I knew I'd have to integrate these kinds of trees into the build just to make it all match. So I did use some of those trees from Eternity Isle, both the jungle and the ancient ones, but I also do go in later and add some of the base game trees like the small oak as well as the red trees, just to kind of bring a different bit of colour and make it look as natural as I possibly could. Now, as this build is obviously meant to mimic a village, I obviously knew I wanted to include Kristoff's stall and Goofy's stall in the build, as well as these smaller craftable stalls that just have some fruits and vegetables on, just to make it seem as though an actual village. But I obviously didn't want to make the market area too big, just because there's not much space as it is, so I kind of just prioritised those and popped them in a small section in the middle. As I said before, leading up to Elsa's cave, I just gave some rock pebbles to lead our way in there, and I probably will decorate a little bit more outside her cave at another time. But hopefully we can pray that they finally give her her own house. I don't know why she's still living in a cave. I find it very strange. But hopefully at some point we'll actually get a home for her to move into. But for now I'll decorate it as best I can so you can kind of know that that's where she's living. Blocking in the main trees was kind of one of the things I wanted to prioritize early on, as obviously it is a forest build, so I knew there'd be a lot of trees, a lot of bushes, a lot of flowers. So blocking in those trees just gave me a good opportunity to know where everything was going and ensure that everything was covered over as much as I wanted it to be. So I did, in between the build, just have a little run around and make sure it was looking how I wanted it to, before I then went in with some of the bushes all around in those gaps that needed filling. Obviously during the build I did use one of my favourite plants, which is the butterfly flower, which, as I always say, please give us in more colours. I would love more colours of it. Obviously purple is my favourite, so I'm more than happy to have a purple one, but please give us more colours. But I did kind of utilise this as much as I could in the build, as I just think it really fits the forest theme, and yeah, I just love it. So it fit really well between all the other bushes and shrubbery. Now with the two small cottages, I wanted them to look kind of lived in and as though people actually lived there, so I did pop a couple of items out the front of them, such as the laundry basket as well as the yellow bike. So it kind of did seem like people would live here and it fit the houses, but I also didn't want to add too many things, just because obviously I didn't want it to look too cluttered and kind of block the space that we had to be able to actually see the building. So they weren't too decorated, but I think all of the flowers and bushes and everything around kind of just make them fit in perfectly anyway. Now for lighting in the build, I did place some of the craftable lampposts at the bridges and some of the entrances, just to kind of lead us into the area. But then I did also use a lot of pumpkin vine lamps around the biome, just because these fit the forest perfectly and give it a very magical vibe. And I also added a lot of melted candles dotted around. Now this is obviously something you don't have to do if you are on a limited item amount. It's not necessary, but I just personally like to do it in more of these kind of magical builds. So mainly in my forest and my glade, I kind of do this a lot, where I'll place the melted candles in between bushes and around the biome, just so then when you're walking through at sunset or during nighttime, you just get this really magical glow as you walk around, and it just brings a lot more character, I think, to the build. Now as we have Belle's library over there, I did want to include a lot of books dotted around, and as you'll see later on, I do add some tables where people would sit and read outside, and I just feel like it fit really well with this new home. I absolutely love it. I think it's such a cute building to have, because it doesn't necessarily look like a house, it looks like a library, which brings a lot more character to this kind of village build, because you have a tavern where people would go and hang out and have meals, you have a library where people would go and read. So it wasn't just pure homes, it felt like lived in buildings, which is something I'm really enjoying them doing in the premium shop. I hope we do get more things that will be that way, and from what I've seen, there's something coming I'm very excited about adding into my valley, because I just love these buildings that look like real buildings that you could go in and decorate and make a pub or make a library or anything you want to do with it. If you want to make it your home, make it your home. It's a beautiful building. Do whatever you want with it. But I just love the idea of being able to make kind of like your own little village, your own little town, using these buildings. I love that they're doing this at the moment, so I hope to see a lot more. Now in this main seating area, I did put down 2 of the craftable tables and some of the craftable chairs. I was kind of toying around with how much seating I wanted to include, but I just felt like this would be such a cute spot for people to come and read, and later on in the build, before I finish up, I do add some food and things like that just to make it look more natural, and I just think this would be a cute spot to hang out. Now at either side of the bridge I did add some of the arches from the star path. I'm obsessed with these arches. I want to include them everywhere, and I just feel like they fit really well to be able to kind of introduce you into the build, as they just fit the kind of cottagecore theme. Now as you can see with the tavern, I just gave it some cute little barrel tables and stools. I used the Toy Story stools and the Tangled barrel tables, as well as some other smaller items just to kind of make it seem like an actual tavern. And above these areas I did put some of the new floating lanterns from the Star Path. I think these are adorable and I want to use them anywhere I can, and obviously having them above the tavern from Tangled just makes complete sense, and I just feel like it brings such a cozy vibe to the building. Now on this small little pathway leading up to Frosted Heights, I did place a bench and some books just to make it a kind of cozy little area that people could come and sit, and it kind of just made this pathway a little bit more intricate. A lot of the items in this build are craftable, so if that's something you're worried about, obviously now we have such a large limit for Scrooge's store that people can just get whatever they want. But obviously if you're someone who is new to the game and you don't have all of these items that I used from Scrooge's, a lot of them in this build are craftable, so don't worry too much about some things that you see. They probably are most likely craftable, so just if you're not sure, let me know in the comments and I will let you know whether they're craftable or not. Now I didn't quite get it on camera, but to finish up the build I did add lots of flowers around, and I also added food to the tables, ones that kind of just fit the vibe. So for the tavern I used kind of pub style food, and on the reading tables I used sort of cakes and things like that to make it seem as though people would sit and have a coffee or something and hang out there and read. And then after that I just added the different pathway to the tavern house, which is disappointing that we have a different pathway that we have to use for it, but I did my best to make it look as natural as possible without having to kind of change the whole pathway for the build. So here is the final build. As you can see, I've got the archways over the bridges and I've made it sunset just because then we can see all the lights and everything in action. So as we cross into the bridge, we obviously come into the first section, and as you can see, everything is very glowy and covered over and just very mystical. And as we come into the left, you can obviously see we've got Belle's library house with lots of books outside, and also a rustic water pump just to kind of fit the Beauty and the Beast theme. I absolutely think this house is gorgeous. I love it, and I cannot wait to decorate more inside to make an actual library. I think it's going to be so sweet. And on the right, you can see obviously we have the wishing well, as well as the tables with the sort of cakes and food and books and everything on it where people sit and hang out. And in front of that, we obviously have the gorgeous tavern house from the premium shop with the floating lanterns above it from the star path and the little tables to sit on. I think this tavern is gorgeous, and again, I cannot wait to do the inside of it. I'm already planning in advance how it's going to look inside, so I think it's absolutely gorgeous, but I love having it in this little spot. As we follow it around to the left, we obviously have the pathway to lead us up to Frosted Heights with the little bench and some more books and everything like that. And obviously the melted candles do just bring a really nice warm glow into everything. Now as we come around to the right, you can obviously see we've got our two little cottages, and we've also got the Goofy stall, the Kristoff stall and the craftable stalls in front of the rustic clock, which is also craftable, and it just makes this nice little courtyard area in the sort of centre of the village. And then on the right hand side, we obviously have the pathway leading over to the other side of the forest, which I've just done very covered over and very sort of overgrown. After that, we obviously have a pathway leading up to Frosted Heights, and then on the left of that we obviously have a little rock pathway leading to Elsa's cave. So that is it for the build. I hope you guys did enjoy. Obviously I've included some pictures of kind of an overview of how it looks, and this was sort of a project I wasn't sure about doing, but once we got the tavern house and the Belle library, I was like, I have to expand my village. I was debating putting Gaston's house in here, and I did kind of trial and error it, but just with the space I had, it just didn't work. And if there was any buildings in this build I wanted to kind of sacrifice, it would have been his, because I feel like his really fits in the original place I was going to put it, which is in the glade, and so I wasn't too fussed about losing out on that. And I do feel like if we do eventually get more homes that fit this area, I'm going to have to just find a way to make it work, because they're giving us too many houses for the space I have. So that is it for the video. Let me know in the comments if you guys enjoyed the build, if there's anything else you wanted to see, or any questions again about any of the craftable items I used. I hope it was a kind of informative video for you. I really enjoyed doing it. I'm really happy that it's done and it's in my valley, and my forest is basically completed until they give us something else I have to add, and then I'm in trouble. But until then, make sure you like and subscribe, and thank you so much for 200 subscribers. I cannot thank you enough. It genuinely means a lot. I really am enjoying making videos for everyone, and the support and the feedback has been so lovely. So make sure you subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.